As I understand, you think that Mr. Culp, the new CEO, should be changing the narrative. Did he do that yesterday?
No, he did not. He really needs to put some meat on the bone. I mean, investors now want details. It's no longer just good enough to show up and say all is fine, all is fine. That's not acceptable, obviously, and people are voting with their feet and selling the stock here. So I think he needs to show up and start talking about what the tangible plan is to turn this thing around.
So Scott, to be unfair, why did he do that yesterday? I'm going to quote here part of what he said. He said, "We're going to look at everything and all of our options again with a sense of urgency." I would have thought they'd be doing that already. Why did he need to go on the media and say that without having some specific, concrete things to announce?
Well, I think he's got a disastrous public relations group around him. I mean, really tone deaf to what investors care about and are thinking about right now. And I just don't understand it at all. I mean, to go on TV and not have something to say about how you're going to actually fix the balance sheet, but just to say, oh, yeah, I got to fix the balance sheet. Well, no kidding. Everybody knows you got to fix the balance sheet. Just tell us how you're going to do it.
So why do you still have a buy rating on the stock?
Well, it's almost too late to downgrade, right? I mean, it's clearly a mistake on my part, and I own it personally. I think the value, I mean, look, let's back up a little bit, take the emotion out of it. This is a $120 billion revenue company that ought to be generating to the tune of about $10 billion of cash a year. And right now it's not generating much cash at all, right? So we know that's problematic. But really the opportunity set is there. And it's a stock that's down to below $8 a share, really implying that, I mean, investors are making a bet that this thing could potentially go under. And I think the odds of that are pretty low.
Well, fair point. What was interesting yesterday is how GE traded. There were some really large trades in General Electric that hit the tape. Out of the 12 largest blocks in the S&P, 9 of them were for GE. But you also then seem to have some big buyers accumulating positions in the $9 region. What's your take on how many kind of institutions need to sell just for end of the year versus, say, an activist investor, a large buyer who wants to be in for the longer term?
Well, I think a couple of the top holders that have been selling stock have told me that they were forced to sell stock just for risk control purposes. They just lost too much money, and sadly, that's just it's just the world we live in. Rather than being able to buy more when the stock is down, they're actually forced to sell. And clearly, there's some window dressing that occurs. I mean, no one wants to explain to their bosses why they own this thing, and just getting it off their books is sometimes just easier. And I've had folks tell me that if Larry's able to turn it around, they'd be willing to buy the stock back at $12, $13 a share, with more visibility around the balance sheet.
So as you say, Scott, there's been so much bad news around this company. If you take the analysis and look at it, if you broke it up, if you sold it for parts, how much would it be worth? What does that tell you? Is it worth more than what the market's valuing right now, or less?
It's worth a lot more. I mean, it is that's the interesting part about this, is that if you broke it up, and clearly you have to be able to identify what your losses are in insurance and things like that, but if you broke it up, it is worth as much as $20 a share, and so I mean, you're trading at a big discount. But look, we saw this in late 2008 to early 2009. I mean, GE stocks sold down to $6 a share, and as soon as they started fixing the balance sheet, the stock went from 6 to 30. So we've seen this before on GE. So I don't feel like a fool having a $21 target price. I mean, you can get there. You just have to plug some holes.